The Accountant 2 is directed by Gavin O'Connor and stars Ben Affleck, John Bernthal, and among others. And this is now 8 years after the events of the first film, where Christian Wolff is having to go on a task in order to find out what happened to J.K. Simmons' character. And that's not a spoiler. This is something in the trailers that it shows that he ended up having to figure out his death behind everything of J.K. Simmons. And it also has to involve with him going after looking for a I'll just leave it very vague, looking for a family. I'll leave it there. And along the way, he has to team up with John Bernthal, his brother from the first film, in order to take down bad guys, and on top of getting into shenanigans together. As the movie plays out more of the comedy this time around with his brother, with the sibling rivalry that was from the first film. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Gavin O'Connor, who I've really admired as a director. I've loved a lot of his films that he's done, especially Miracle, The First Accountant, and I also really enjoyed that film a few years ago called The Way Back with Ben Affleck, and I still have yet to see Warrior, but I heard that one's really great. And going into this one, I was really excited for it, especially because I really enjoyed The First Accountant with how it was able to showcase Affleck doing in the action department, but also using his performance really captured a lot of what it means to be dealing with autism, and it was almost like a cross between Rain Man and the Hitman games in a good way. And I was really interested to see if they were actually going to do a sequel for a long time, because I actually heard that they wanted to do different things, whether it was going to be a TV series or a sequel itself. And, you know, there was that phase going through a while where Affleck was having to go through some personal stuff, and I think it also had to do with, like, finding probably the right story for a long time, if what I'm guessing. So I could definitely see why it took a while before they got things back on track with the same crew for this one. And I couldn't be more excited for something like this, because from the trailers alone, with them trying to up the ante of it being like the sibling, you know, rivalry and stuff with him and John Bernthal, I thought was definitely going to play into that very well. And just it being more action packed and giving you what you wanted from the first film got me really hyped. And so after upon seeing it, I had a really great time with this. I think this one is either on par or in some ways better than the first one to some extent, but I just had a really good kick out of it, and it was actually everything that I really wanted to see out of the sequel. And so to get my pros out of the way, Affleck is not only tremendous as great and tremendous as usual as playing Christian Wolff, he really nails it down with a lot of his mannerisms and stuff that he had from like the first film. Him being able to really showcase a lot of his skills as being in the action department, where he has that type of, I forgot how to describe it. It's a certain type of martial arts that they use where, you know, he's very quick in having to like break bones and stuff. Like it's really fun to see him in a lot of these kind of roles like this. And I really enjoyed the chemistry between him and John Bernthal. And John Bernthal I've always admired as an underrated actor, you know, especially from a lot of his roles. And from what I've seen of The Punisher, you know, he really nails it from what I've seen. But also his stigma and his stint in other films that I've really enjoyed, especially Fury, and just so many movies to count where he really just knocks it out in every role I've seen him in. And the way that they play up the comedy in this is just not only funny to watch, especially with the stuff that's involving where John Bernthal is just, his character is just trying to really keep up with Affleck, with some of the stuff that he says that, you know, whether it's supposed to be either sarcasm or he's seeing his babbling going on where he's trying to tell him like things in a very intellectual way. It's just really fun to see the way they play it out. But what I also appreciate too is how in this one we get to see more of Braxton unfold as a character, and they give into some more layers with him with being like a kind of a loner, so to speak. And it's almost like his brother is having to give him a new unfolding of life as it goes along. And it's the same thing, it's vice versa as well. Because you start to see Affleck start to do some other things where he's like dancing one part, which is hilarious, and then trying to get in touch with expanding himself, trying to get into more of a social type of crowd. Because we get to see there's a little minor thing that happens at the beginning of the film where he's trying to go on speed dates and everything, and he's having to use his skills to try to, his social skills and what he thinks is going to work and everything. And not only did it play out very hilarious, but it also just shows that, you know, he's not really used to a lot of how others react with his type of state and everything. But it works in a very earnest way. And then the brutality and the action scenes are all really well crafted, especially with a lot of the gunshots they do. Much like in the first film, they really don't hold back on their brutality, because when you see a lot of the shit go down, especially as the action picks up, like you're seeing not only people getting killed in like very brutal ways, but also one thing I will have to get into, just a mix kind of I have with the villains, is that the villains in this are never stopping to where they're trying to go after the ones that Affleck and his brother are having to go after as well. And so they up the stakes more this time with being able to play into stuff that gets a little bit convoluted that I'll get into some of my cons with later. But it really shows that they up the ante on this time. And I do also appreciate that they give more of the expansion of the agent that was from the first one more in this. Although I will have to say that they also bring another character in that we kind of see from the trailers, the blonde-headed woman. I do really appreciate they give into some depth with her character, because there's some stuff that I can't reveal, but it has to do with her backstory and anything that I found very engaging. And it actually has a really cool twist that I really bought. Although it does leave some stuff very logically kind of very questionable on the logic in that regard. But to get into more of my pros, I really love the cinematography, and the shootout that takes place at the end, where it's in Mexico and stuff, like you seen from the trailers, was not only very badass, but I really love how it's almost something out of like Army of Two, where you have just two guys just shooting and going after these bad guys and stuff, and the way they play into it, it almost becomes like a war film for a second, but in a good way. And so that was great. And then there's more I can go into detail, but this is now where I kind of get into some of my little minor cons. And we'll have to say that they do bring in some cool villains in this that I do like how they up the ante. But at the same time, I do have a con, because it seems like we don't really get a whole lot of depth with what these villains are, because there's little screen time that's involved with some of these ones that we pick up from the beginning. And then toward the third half, the last half, we do get introduced to another villain in this that I feel like we could have really spent a whole lot more time with. And I know that was trying to be the point of making it more twisted after twist, but it almost seems like there's more they really could have probably picked that up maybe toward like the very end or something like that, because, or at least earlier in the film, because the way it builds up to it, it really kind of felt like they were just bringing more stuff along just to raise the stakes, and which is important. But it does seem like it leaves a lot to be desired because it's very underdeveloped. And if they're setting this to be basically a franchise and stuff, I'm definitely down for it. But you could definitely see that they had to put a lot more things that were trying to be a lot more crowded in the film than what it appeared to be, if you know what I mean. And so, on top of that, going back to the girl that I mentioned earlier, I do like her character, especially they set up the backstory for her and stuff. But it does feel like there's some things that when we get to reveal in the third half that I did kind of question, like, okay, there's more they really could have like added on to, and it almost seems like there's more things that they really should have explored more with her, and we don't really get much of an interaction with her and the rest of the main characters that much, and I think that was a really missed opportunity. And so there was that, and then, but if overall though, I still really had a great time with this one, and I'm definitely open to see what else they do with this, because if they do decide to do more sequels and stuff down the line, I would love to see this become like the next John Wick franchise for sure. And so with that, I'm going to give it a high compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. And so for those of you who have also seen The Accountant 2, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.